Hey, it's John. Welcome back to the show, and welcome back to the latest edition of the Live Cuts. My guest today, you best know from his fantastic YouTube channel, Rock Daydream Nation. You may have seen me on there a few times. You also may know my guest from where I met our guest, from the Contrarians, Mr. Peter Kerr. Welcome to my show.
Great to be on, John. Love your show and love this series. So really looking forward to having a chat.
Thank you so much, Peter. I am so looking forward to this. So, the premise of this series is to talk about a live album that doesn't get enough love or recognition. Today's album we will discuss was the second live album by this band and this fantastic and influential guitar player. I am talking about Michael Schenker, and this is his second live album from 1984, Rock Will Never Die. This was his second live album and his sixth album overall as the Michael Schenker Group. This was released on Chrysalis Records. It was produced by Jack Douglas. This performance on this album, these performances came from October 22 and October 23 from 1983. And these performances were at the Hammersmith Odeon in London, England. We've talked a few times here on the Live Cut about some live concerts that were recorded at Hammersmith Odeon. At this time, the band, the Michael Schenker Group, was the incomparable Michael Schenker on lead guitar, Derek St. Holmes on rhythm guitar, backing vocals and lead vocals on two songs. We have Gary Barden on lead vocals. We have Andy Nye on keyboards and backing vocals. And we have the rhythm section of Chris Glenn on bass guitar and Ted McKenna on drums. For those of you who've been watching my series here, The Live Cut, those names may sound familiar because they played on this live album by the sensational Alex Harvey Band that Logan Collins and I reviewed a few weeks back. This is a very strong live album, as is this one, Rock Will Never Die. So, Peter, when did you first get acquainted with Michael Schenker Group's music?
Well, there was a compilation, an Aussie metal compilation that came out in the 80s, and I think it was called Metal Militia or something. I can't remember the exact name, but one of the tracks on the album was a track called Assault Attack.
Okay.
And it had the very familiar lever-lunged vocals of Graham Bonnet, which I knew from Rainbow because I'm a huge Rainbow fan.
Yes.
But it had this wonderful fretboard work of Michael Schenker. So I bought the album. This is my favorite MSG album on Michael Schenker Group.
I'll support his 2 CD set. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Absolutely. Do yourself a favor and get it. And started exploring the Michael Schenker catalog. I just love his guitar playing. I think he's in the pantheon of guitarists that have that beautiful tone. And there's only a few. He's up there with Richie Blackmore. And I just like the look of him. You know, he's got that wonderful, you've got the flying V, the short blonde hair. I love the album cover of this. It just looks exciting. There's the back. Anyway, I started exploring the catalog, and, you have to go to UFO and Strangers in the Night. This is one of their albums in 1980, but arguably maybe one of the greatest live albums of all time. Fantastic. Explored the UFO catalog. And then more into the MSG catalog. Got Live at Budokan. A bit more of a story about that later. record store day. I'm a big
Oh,
fan.
nice.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So I just love the Michael Schenker Group, and I think he was at his peak in the 70s, briefly with the Scorpions, then with UFO, and then the MSG era. I love it. So, answer a bit long-winded. Assault Attack was my entry point to Michael Schenker with Graham Bonnet and that particular song, and then that album, and then I started exploring, and it led me to this album, which we're focusing today. Rock Will Never Die.
Excellent.
There you go.
Excellent. Okay, so I didn't know about Michael Schenker Group till later. They didn't play him on our rock radio stations here in northeastern Pennsylvania, United States. I knew of Michael Schenker. I knew he was in Scorpions and UFO and Michael Schenker Group, of course. I did hear a few of his songs on WRKC Radio Kings College out of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, when they had a heavy metal show that would run from 12 noon to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturdays. That's when I would first hear Into the Arena. That's when I'd first hear On and On. That's when I would first hear Captain Nemo. Okay. But I never went and explored. Then I would hear him again a few years later when he had a hit on rock radio and a hit our pop stations here called Anytime. And that was with Macaulay Schenker Group. So that was when I got more acquainted with him, got to see what he looked like. By then, his hair was very, very long. He didn't have a mullet like he did on the Rock Will Never Die album. And from there, I knew who he was. I knew UFO because they played him on our classic rock stations. Not too much, but they play Too Hard to Handle and Lights Out. And once in a while, you'd hear Doctor, Doctor. So that was when I discovered him. And I didn't really get really big into UFO or Michael Schenker Group until maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago or so. And I bought the UFO collection. It had all of the albums from Phenomenon through Strangers in the Night. And it had a bunch of bonus tracks on there as well. It's a 4 CD collection. But it had a ton of bonus stuff, ton of live stuff that wasn't previously released. So I have that collection. And Michael Schenker Group, I never really, really dug into him, but I did see him live twice. Have you ever seen him live?
No, he's never come to Australia. And I tell you, I'm on his Facebook page and I'm a fair dinkum pest because anytime he puts a post, I say, please come to Australia. And he gives me a little thumbs up or a heart or something, but he doesn't. He did an interview with a podcast in Australia and he said that he was considering coming to Australia at one stage, but it's the economics. They would have to do a package tour to make it. It's all about economics. Are they going to make money or are they going to make a loss? And, to be quite frank, if he was just coming as a headliner, it'd be about a 500 type venue, like a club. So he would have to co-headline with someone. Scorpions, which will never happen. We'll talk about more about that. But it'd have to be like a triple bill or a co-bill economically to make it work. But in answer, no, I've never seen him. I want to see him. Anytime I travel overseas, if I go to America, I'm always looking at the gig guide, hopeful. Like I was just in Tokyo a couple of months ago. He's playing the Budokan in January. We always seem to, it's just seemed to miss pass. So he is on my fair income uptick bucket list. I want to see him. I've got plenty of live DVDs. I think, you look at the band and everything is on him. He's just got that charisma. He's got that aura about him. But he's not like self-indulgent like an Yngwie Malmsteen. No disrespect. But
Right.
it's not like his ego takes over the band. Everyone's got their place, but there's something about him. He's got that X factor that your eyes are on him, no matter who's singing in the band. And yeah, so I definitely would love to see him.
I've been fortunate enough to see him twice. I saw him 10 years ago, and it was not Michael Schenker Group. It was just Michael Schenker. And it was interesting because that night he had the rhythm section of Scorpions during their prime. So he had Francis Buchholz on bass, and he had Herman Rarebell on drums, and he had Doogie White singing. That night,
nice.
Yeah, it was cool. That night, he was promoting the third Temple of Rock album he put out. So he was playing
that Temple of Rock, yes.
Yeah, so he played some Temple of Rock. He played only 2 Michael Schenker Group songs, and he played a ton of Scorpions and UFO. Interestingly, he played 2 songs from Scorpions that he did not play on, but he had the rhythm section. He had Herman and Francis there. So he ended the set with Rock You Like a Hurricane. And then the second song of his encore was Blackout. But he played 4 songs from Love Drive. So, yeah. But it was an excellent show. And the second time I saw him, and that was in a 325 seat theater, by the way. He sold it out. The second time I saw him, it was in 2022, and that was at the Sherman Theater in Stroudsburg, PA. That's a bigger venue. He had Gates of Eden and Eric Martin open. And that night, it was more UFO and Michael Schenker Group stuff. He also played songs off his, it was the tour for the Immortal album. And he had Ronnie Romero on lead vocals, who had sung with Rainbow not too long before that. And at least in their live shows. And that night, it was a more versatile show. It was a great show, but he kind of went a little all over the map. I'm trying to think. I don't know if he played any Scorpions. He might have played 1 or 2 Scorpions songs that night, but it was mostly about Michael Schenker Group. And of course, he played 5 or 6 UFO songs. So both times I saw him, he was very good. He just commands stage right, and he just stands there and rocks back and forth and has this big smile on his face. And he sounded fantastic. But like you said, when you go see him live, it's not about him, because he might do some good solos and all, but they're playing for the song. And you really hear that on this album.
The song is king.
No doubt about it.
I mean, your eyes are on him, but the song is king. And that's why he's such a great guitarist, because the song rules. It's not his playing is the dominant force. It plays within the song. And he'll do that tasty little lead break or outro or riff. It's within the song, where there are other shredders and they just drown the song.
Right. Well, you had mentioned Yngwie Malmsteen, and he is somebody I've seen live. And when you go to see Yngwie, you know it's about Yngwie.
So talented, though.
The
guy's got blues chops. And I was watching a podcast, John, about, I think it was Waldo from Alcatraz, and he was talking about behind the scenes of recording those early Alcatraz albums, and he said that Yngwie could play rhythm, great blues player, but just wanted to shred. And he just sort of had this, and also I've spoken on my channel about Benny Vincent. Mm-hmm. Again, people have heard him play the blues, and very talented, but it's in their head. They're wired faster, more complicated. That's the way they're wired. Michael Schenker could play fast, but it was the song that ruled.
I'm smiling because Nick Esquire sent me that video last night. And I watched it this morning, the interview with Jimmy Waldo.
Wow. Well, that's going to set the world on fire, but we'll get back onto talking about our MSG.
Exactly.
I,
So
I often think, why was he not bigger? And I think that UFO were one or two albums away from breaking big.
I agree with that.
Yep. So I might be a contrarian here, but I think their albums were good, not great. I don't think you can put any of those studio albums and say it's a masterpiece. They were progressively getting better and better and better. Strangers in the Night is a masterpiece. That is a great live album. And I know that Michael says there were mistakes. I don't care.
Right.
I think the imperfections make it sound real, make it sound like a human. It's more human. And I think that's one of the greatest live albums. It's got that energy, that spark. But I think they were one or two studio albums from breaking big. But alas, the personalities within the band exploded. You had a young German prodigy, couldn't barely speak English with these folks who are a little bit older, different personalities. You're going to have a clash, and it became intolerable. But that's a shame, because I think there was definitely a chemistry there. And I think Schenker lifted that band from being a B band or an average B band into something that was knocking on the door of greatness. And that can be attested with Strangers in the Night. And, so Schenker does MSG. And I think they're a very good band, but they weren't. I wouldn't put any of their albums as truly great or masterpiece level, even though I love Assault Attack. And I think the reason for that is that he was always changing the combinations. And if you're changing combinations and chemistry, that sort of does restrict you. Chemistry is very important. So I think he was always finding that. I think in their 4 or 5 albums, there was probably a great album, but instead you had about 4 or 5 good to very good albums.
I would agree with that. And he's kind of like the hard rock version of Carlos Santana in the fact that a lot of great musicians passed through the Michael Schenker Group. And it was, yes, they never had that steady lineup for like an 8-10 year period or more. There was always changes in the lineup. In fact, the lineup on this album, sans Derek St. Holmes, there was some stability here because they stayed together for a few albums. Did Gary, Chris, and Ted, although Ted came in later because he had Cozy Powell there on the MSG album, the second album. But yeah, this is one of the longest running lineups. Well, certainly from a recording standpoint, because now he's still putting out albums. We'll go into that later on. But yes, there was never that connection. Great live band, but in the studio, you're putting out pretty good albums, but no, not the knockout album. And I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I agree with you with UFO on that as well. Lights Out was a pretty big seller. I'm surprised it never went gold here in the United States, but it's not great all the way through. You have a few average tracks in there amidst all the greatness.
And boy, did they have the machinery of Chrysalis behind them. I mean, for God's sakes, they had George Martin produce one of their albums. So you can't get a much more prestigious. They were definitely looked at as maybe the new Led Zeppelin. And in some aspects, if you listen to the bottom end, they've got that beefy John Bonham sound. So they definitely were being marketed or looked at as the heavy metal or the hard rock hope, but just didn't quite make it. And I've spoken to so many folks that listened to Strangers in the Night when they came out and saw the tour and go, "Where's Schenker?"
Yeah.
And then they went on to the new lineup.
You went to
So
Paul
just
Chapman,
just just too unstable. But hey, I want to talk about this album,
Yes.
and we need to go
We're
back.
off track,
We need
but
we need to go back to this. So this is the album. I think it went top 10 in the UK. It did really well, and top 5.
went to number 5.
Yep. It's a solid live album. I wouldn't rate it as highly as Strangers in the Night, but Gary Barden, interesting vocalist. I don't think he's a great vocalist, but he's got that rough, earthy charm about him. And Michael really seems to dig him, because anytime there's a project, it's always Gary Barden's back.
Yep.
Maybe because he doesn't have the ego that a lot of other vocalists have had in MSG, but he seems to like him. And Gary's a bit hit and miss live. And even on this album, which is, the big one, he's a little bit hit and miss. On this album, I have to say he's a bit more miss than hit. And this is a bit of a negative. The playing on this album is sensational. It really is good. They're really tight. I do have some issues with the production, because the drums sound absolutely terrible, and I'll talk to you about that. But Gary Barden's vocals are a bit over the shop, and especially when he's trying to sing Graham Bonnet vocal lines. And let's face it, Graham Bonnet's vocal lines, there's only a few vocalists that can get into that sort of territory. Do you share that opinion? The vocals are a little bit shaky on this album.
I thought they were solid. I didn't think they were shaky. And I also watched a lot of the VHS. There was a VHS tape for this album as well, and that's out on YouTube as well. So I checked some of that out today. I think he was a good front man, perhaps a better front man than a singer. But he reminded me, I thought he worked well within the band. Like Phil Mogg is a good singer, but I don't think he's one of the classic singers. But I think he sounds perfect with UFO. I think Gary sounds, maybe not perfect for Michael Schenker Group, but it's a good fit.
Yeah, well, a song like "Rock My Nights Away," I like this song. This is a later period Michael Schenker. Well, when I say later period, but mid-period. It's a bit AOR. It's really hooky. But you listen to Gary Barden's vocals, they're a little bit rough. Cry for the Nations. Barden sounds a little bit more in his pathway, a bit more in his laneway, a bit more solid, but he's got support with Andy Nee on keyboards. There's a lot of sort of supporting background vocals on that. Attack of the Mad Axeman. Barden does this falsetto, and it's really scratchy. So I'm not sure, maybe his vocals at that particular time were not at his peak. And I'm not sure that the songs that he was asked to do, because this was probably, he was drafted in very quickly after Bonnet, because Bonnet never played live.
Right.
He had a very unfortunate sort of incident at a club. Read it on Kerrang, read it on the YouTube. You'll get all the whole sordid story. He got fired from the band, and then Barden came back into the band. And, it's very hard for a singer to pick up in a very short space of time and get into the pocket of other singers' vocal lines and songs, because the songs are written tailored for that vocalist. So I just get the feel. I like this album a lot. I think melodically it's very strong. Sonically, it might have some issues on the bottom end, but Michael Schenker's guitar is just so, you forgive a lot of what's happening, other than because you're so centered on Michael Schenker. But for me, the weakness is Barden's vocals on this album.
Okay, let me ask you this then, since we're talking about vocalists. You had a strong vocalist in this band for a short period of time, and on this album in Derek St. Holmes. But he's just doing backing vocals and playing rhythm guitar most of the time. He sings lead on one song and co-lead on another. Do you think we should have had more Derek St. Holmes singing on here? Because he has a great reputation as a singer. Just listen to the first 3 albums he did with Ted Nugent, for example, and a few others after that, and as well as the Whitford St. Holmes album. Do you think he should have sang some more lead on here than Gary? Or maybe they bounce off each other?
I agree. I think that's a wasted opportunity. And I was going to say that his rhythm work really adds another layer sonically to this album. He's one of the positives on this album. His rhythm playing is so strong all the way through. And when you hear his backup vocals, it really lifts the song. So, yeah, absolutely. But Schenker has, you look through his career, he has this unbridled loyalty to Barden.
Yes.
I like Barden. And sometimes his roughness around the edges vocals has this fragility that I think's endearing. But on this album, it was a bit on the wrong side of the ledger for me.
Gotcha.
And this is a major release on a label, Chrysalis label.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
And yeah, the vocals are kind of a little bit rough. So to me, in that sense, yeah, it's an interesting album.
There's another question I'd like to ask you. This is something that came out at me, and we were talking about Assault Attack earlier on. This was recorded for the Built to Destroy album. The original album is heavy on Built to Destroy and only has 1 track from Assault Attack. And if you go on the extended version of the album, the remastered version that came out in 2009, we have some extra tracks that weren't on the original, like Cry for the Nations, Rock You to the Ground, Red Sky, Looking for Love, Armed and Ready. We only got 1 more song from Assault Attack on here. Do you think this album would be stronger if there was more representation from that album, even though you're not too crazy about what Gary's doing, singing the Graham Bonnet parts?
Yeah, well, Desert Song. This is a 6-minute song, and I love this song. This song with Bonnet has a controlled energy, and it's all about build up. There's tension in this song, and it's a build up. It's one of the great songs. Barden really struggles. It's a challenging song, and it requires, he's got to really stretch it out for 6 minutes. You've got to get in the laneway. And if you're not in the right laneway, you're exposed. And you're exposed for 6 minutes. So, I don't know. Maybe they could have put Desert Song, maybe the song order, all the more challenging songs, put it right up near the top, front load all the challenging songs at the start of the concert.
Okay.
And then the less challenging songs and the finale where you've got the finish line, John, later in the show.
And Desert Song was the 10th song performed that night because I checked out Setlist FM. And if that is accurate, I know it's not always accurate. If you listen to the 2009 recording with the extra tracks, this is the way they played the songs that night. So Desert Song is 10th. Maybe if they did it 4th, where Gary's voice would have been stronger, perhaps it would have been a better performance. And then you like put that in like for where Cry for the Nations is, where that's listed 4th on the set list. Maybe you flip flop them out. Cry for the Nations, yeah. I think you pretty much stay in that same lane vocally the whole time. Where Desert Song, you have to have a lot more drama, and you're hitting higher notes.
Absolutely. And let's face it, the band dynamics, you're the singer, you may put these suggestions, but you're always going to kowtow to the guy who's got his name on the band, which is Michael Schenker. And Michael Schenker, oh, no, this is the song set and you will follow. You've got to follow it. But I think being a vocalist is like being an athlete. And you've got to pace yourself. And I just think listening to the vocals, and don't get me wrong, this series is about spotlighting albums, folks. There's a lot to enjoy about this album, sonically, musically, but it's the vocals. It's just very uneven. And I just think if it was the song set was done differently, reordered, it would have been much stronger.
I think musically, this is a very strong album, and you've got fantastic musicians.
Oh,
I mean, you
oh,
have
Nemo, how good is that?
just start that out. Many of you may know the song Captain Nemo if you're a fan of Eddie Trunk here in the United States. That's the theme song to his show that's now on Faction Talk on Sirius XM. It used to be on Hair Nation. It's his show Trunk Nation, but now it's on Faction Talk. So that's the instrumental, the kick-ass instrumental you hear at the beginning before Eddie goes on the air. I love the Captain Nemo Rock My Nights Away 1-2 punch on here. I think that really brings you in. It is killer. His instrument
into the arena. That's another masterclass.
Absolutely.
The band is playing, so fine. But another elephant in the room. What do you think of the drum sound? I think there's a real problem. It sounds really clanky. It doesn't sound clear. There's something wrong with the mix with the drums.
I think
it's not my stereo system.
I'm with you on the original version, which we're talking about today. But if you listen to the remaster, I think they fixed that. I think the drums sound a lot more clear on the 2009 remaster. On the original, I agree that the sound is not up to snuff. There is something lacking there on the drums. Although Ted's playing up a storm, it's just the way that they're recorded. Yes.
What do you think's a better fit, Cozy or Ted? Because I love Cozy, but Cozy is a very he doesn't stick around unless it's Rainbow. His career, he's a bit of a journeyman, and I don't say that in a negative sense. It just means like he just goes from project to project. But I love Cozy's work with MSG, especially on that live album, because I think Schenker deserves a drummer that thunders and roars. What do you think, McKenna?
I'd go with Ted. I think Ted's style works better with MSG than Cozy's does. Cozy sounds really good on One Night at Budokan. He always sounds great. But I think style-wise, I think Ted's a better fit. And they're both monster drummers. I mean, we were talking about Cozy being a journeyman. Ted has gone around the block too, between Sensational Alex Harvey Band, and he played for a few years with Rory Gallagher before he went into Michael Schenker Group. And he sounded great on those Rory Gallagher albums, because on those albums, instead of just going more blues, he was going into this hard rock meets blues sound. There, I thought he fit like a glove. I think on here, he fits in very well also. As does Chris Glenn, the wonderful bass player, who has a fantastic bass solo on here as well. And his bass playing really up in the mix at times. You can hear him really, really clear. And I think he does an outstanding job on here.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about bass, heavy metal bass in the 80s. I was watching an interview with Rudy Sarzo with Billy Corgan, and he was just saying that about bass playing in the 80s in metal albums, you could only hear it like 70% of the time. It's always buried in the mix. So if you can hear bass, I think that's a big tick, and I can certainly hear him. And Chris Glenn has that archetypical anchoring bass sound, locked in with the lockstep with the drums, and it's mighty fine. Hey, I've got a question for you.
Sure.
Do you think that, let's face it, MSG were very much a genre-specific band within hard rock and heavy metal? Do you think that they had potential to break into the mainstream? Because, I mean, hard rock wasn't a dirty word for breaking into the mainstream. Do you think there were just one or two singles away potentially that this band could have broken through? Because Michael Schenker, he's got the photogenic looks. They weren't, they sort of had the groove.
I think with them it was timing. And you could say photogenic, but by the time MTV got really huge, I wouldn't say they were the most photogenic band at that point. To me, they were always going to be a band where they were going to get their peak would have been getting played a lot on album oriented rock radio on your hard rock stations. They were going to get at their peak, they would probably get a lot of that. And we didn't get that back here back then. They certainly got it in the UK, but we didn't have it here. I mean, it was always, Michael Schenker, the guy was in UFO. It didn't seem like there was a lot of attention paid to Michael Schenker Group's music, unless you were a diehard hard rock heavy metal guy. So I think that, I don't know if they had that one or two songs. When I listened to Built to Destroy and I listened to a song like I'm Gonna Make You Mine, that sounds like an attempt at radio. Because
yeah. Well, let's look at the Scorpions. They're a bit older. They're not the uber photogenic band. They came from the 70s. They're a bit older than Schenker, so maybe better songs. I don't know. They had the breakthrough. I just think on a photogenic level, MSG was probably on a par with the Scorpions, maybe even more promotable. But it's all about the songs, isn't it?
Well, number one, I think Matthias had the looks. Matthias was a handsome man, and he was a younger guy than these guys. He had the photogenic looks. Maybe not balding Klaus Meine, right? But
Michael's not too shabby. Michael's not too shabby though.
No,
there he is. He's looking at you, mate. There he is.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not knocking him, but the women loved Matthias. And the song, yes, they had the songs. I think you're talking Scorpions. I think from In Trance through Love at First Sting are all very good to knock out albums, including the albums with Ole John Roth. Maybe it was maybe a little too much for America at that point, maybe a little too extreme at times, but they already had the melodic songs down. Klaus already had a fantastic voice then.
He did.
Maybe
there's another elephant in the room about Michael Schenker and his substance abuse. He did have problems, and that probably derailed him. So that's a very significant factor, And that whole bit about Graham Bonnet, that really that is such a strong album, Assault Attack, that could have really broken them. But the singer being fired before they do the first official formal gig can't be good for anybody. And then putting another singer in at very short notice, that can't be good for anybody. So I think there may be a lot of extra curriculum reasons why this band didn't go to the next level.
I agree with you, because if you think about it, after this album, they break up. They don't come back till 87 with Macaulay Schenker Group. And by that point, it's not as harder rocking. At that point, it's still melodic, but I don't know, even though the songs were a little more radio friendly, I don't know if the songs were necessarily there outside of Any Time. But I think, yes, his demons and his Michael's indulgences, I mean, that probably stopped him in his tracks as well, because that was an ongoing thing with him for a long time. Another thing that you brought up that, light bulb went off in my head. Okay, why would the Scorpions break through and not a band like Michael Schenker Group. Okay, we're talking about how photogenic they were. I'm talking about Matthias. Scorpions had a fantastic singer. And earlier on you were talking about how Gary wasn't wasn't that strong on this album. But Klaus Mang to this day, he's like 77 years old. He still has that fantastic voice. Yeah, he's a short guy with balding hair, but that voice will bring you to tears. And he can sing anything. He was
I,
fantastic.
I,
And a rock.
I agree with you. So maybe if MSG had a David Coverdale or
Mm-hmm.
someone, and I bring up David because I think David wanted to bring him across to Whitesnake, and oh, God knows how that would have ended up.
Well, that was the thing with Michael. I mean, you mentioned that. Wasn't he? He was supposed to be with Ozzy Osbourne at one point.
I've got another one for you, mate. He got asked to audition for the Rolling Stones.
Really?
Yes. Imagine that. It wouldn't have worked because
Was that
his
when he,
style of music is kind of neoclassical, and it just that loose, unstructured, in the pocket groove of a Ronnie Wood or a Mick Taylor. You just don't associate with Michael Schenker. But yes, he was asked in the 70s to audition for the Rolling Stones, and he didn't. He sort of no.
I know where you're going, Peter. That would have been when Mick was leaving. They were recording Black and Blue, and Black and Blue. There were several guitar players on there. You had Harvey Mandel on there, who was with Canned Heats. You had a few other guys on there whose names escape me right now. I know you had at least 4 or 5 guys on there, and Ron Wood played on the most songs, and eventually he got the gig, and he's 50 years later still there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't know Michael Schenker was. You know, to think about that, he was 20 years old at that point. He had already was making waves with UFO by that point. Phenomenon had come out. Doctor's on there. His showcase Rock Bottom's on there. So 20 years old and already had made an album with Scorpions and Lonesome Crow. Now Scorpions were just they were still bubbling under at that point, but UFO were a bigger band. But if you were a musician and you were really into rock music, you knew who Michael Schenker was at that point. So wow,
Yeah.
that's news. That wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And offline, we were talking about being patient.
Yes.
Completely different topic. We won't talk about it, but I don't think Michael Schenker would have the patience musically to work within the song, because could you imagine? They're working a song idea, and he just want to break out and be Schenker. So no, it's just inconceivable that I could imagine him in the Rolling Stones in any shape or form. Whitesnake, I could, but if David had trouble with John Sykes, oh fuck, how would he cope with
Right.
Michael Schenker?
Yeah, exactly. Because you had 2 alpha males in the band at that point.
Oh,
Two
unbelievable.
unbelievable
So
talents in there.
yeah, I think MSG was great potential unfulfilled.
Okay.
As I said, I think in summary, they had some pretty good albums, but none of them were great. If you did a greatest hits, it's great. And their live albums were very good. But I think if you were looking at an encyclopedia and wanted to pinpoint the great shining moment, Broadway light on Michael Schenker, Strangers in the Night.
Yes. Oh, I would agree with that. No doubt about it. And there's a part of me that wants to say Love Drive, but he only played on a few songs on Love Drive.
Yeah, that's sort of cameo. And this album is it's a curio. It's not essential, but if you forgive the vocals, and I know John and I, we sort of minor disagree on that, and
yes.
the drum sound, especially on vinyl, there's a lot to enjoy because musically it's mighty fine.
Do you the first album, live album that Michael Schenker Group did, what One Night at Budokan, was released as a double. This was originally released as a single. Do you think it should have stayed a single, or do you think it should have been released as a double in '84?
I think they were looking at the commercial prospects, and I think a double wouldn't, unless it was two for the price of one.
Yeah,
Look, from an artistic point of view, release the whole show, but to get him a chart placement and sell units, probably the single album was the best. Probably the best option.
option. Okay. When you look at this track listing here, and I think I know where you're going to go, and I'm probably going to go the same route as you. What would you have added to this? What do you think would have made this stronger? Do you think it was too heavy on Built to Destroy? Are there songs on here that you would take out and replace?
Oh, that's a tough one. Good question. Without notice, as he looks, I don't know. I'd actually bring in a bit more UFO, because I think one of the strongest songs on the album is when Klaus comes on stage with Rudolph when they're talking and do Doctor Doctor. It's a real rousing finale. I was listening to this and I'm thinking, wow, this is the best song on the album. It's UFO and it's right at the end, and the crowd are getting into it and they're clapping along. I don't know. Maybe a bit more of a retrospective. UFO, early MSG, Assault Attack, With Caution, road test it. If he's struggling with the vocals, do we try to put it earlier, front load the concert, or just take it out at all? And then a bit more of Built to Destroy. That's how I would do it.
I definitely agree with you that there should be more Assault Attack on here. I'm surprised that the title track or a song like Samurai isn't on here, for starters. We have a few on here that are repeats from One Night at Budokan. I wonder if that was actually necessary. And that's the thing about this album. We have 4 studio albums and you actually already have 2 live albums. I thought that was a little odd. Maybe they were thinking, okay, well, the first live album sold very well.
I think it's a contract filler. It's a contract filler, I think.
Okay. Okay, well,
that's I really that's all I could think. Chrysalis, not renowned for knowing how to manage heavy metal acts, and there's been a few that they've mismanaged, but I think it's a contract filler. I think this is Detective Kerr here. I think that they were supremely pissed off with Assault Attack having a fine album and the singer being fired, that they wanted to over and out.
Okay.
Push him out. That's my theory. I don't know. I just made that up. It's just came into my head.
And
I don't know. What do you think?
And you may be right here, because even though with Built to Destroy, which was the next album, when I was listening to that album this week, it sounded more like a push for America. But at the same time, I don't think Chrysalis gave it the push. And I think that may be because of what happened with Graham and Assault Attack not being there to sing on the tour for
annoying.
For this,
because the sales stalled.
Right.
They couldn't promote the album. And again, you had all the you don't know what was happening with Schenker. They could have been, because he is a volatile character, and I've read lots of stories at his worst live. He is, the crowd have actually walked out, and he's been, really, he's had his low lows from that sort of perspective. So you don't know what sort of, how he was behaving, what his extracurricular activities were. But I get the feel this is just a filler. pushing it out, and it may have been a result of what was happening with that assault attack.
And it's interesting. It could have been that way, yet they put the concert out on VHS for you to buy too. Right when the VHS format was starting to gain steam here in the United States, because back then people were buying concerts on VHS. So it's an interesting thing. When you listen to this band, what other bands do you think they sound like? And besides like UFO?
Well, there is a little bit of there's Gallop Rock,
Mm-hmm.
which reminds me of Iron Maiden.
Yes.
Because Iron Maiden come from the same source pool as UFO,
Mm-hmm.
who come from the same source pool as Deep Purple, which I think created a little bit of Gallop Rock with Living Wreck off the In Rock album. So there's a little bit of that. I hear a little bit of Sabbath.
Okay.
There's one song that reminds me of, it comes straight off Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, or Sabotage, and that's Red Sky at Night. At the start of it, you hear that sort of wah-wah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then it goes into that neoclassical gallop. So a lot of Blackmore, a lot of Purple, a lot of Rainbow, because of Schenker's fills.
I was going to say Rainbow.
Yeah. So Schenker and Randy Rhoads, they were really waving the flag of neoclassical, which in turn built the foundations of power metal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, song structures that weren't based on the blues, but based on classical music and classical runs. Now, you listen to interviews with Michael Schenker. He says he doesn't listen to popular music, so he is in a bubble of his own. But I'm sure that as a young ticker, as a young man, he would have been familiar with Ludwig van Beethoven and Mozart and Bach, because a lot of that, to me, I can hear in his fretboard runs. I hear more of the classical. He has the blues side, but he has definitely that neoclassical. So whether he's picking that up inherently through Richie Blackmore, and I know he loves Richie Blackmore because apparently he used to ring Richie Blackmore at 2 a.m. in the morning, and Richie'd have to hang up.
Right.
He was like a stalking fan. Maybe. But that's what I hear. Sabbath, Gallop Rock, maybe contemporaries with Maiden, UFO, Deep Purple, Rainbow.
Song structure wise, I hear a lot of Blue Oyster Cult. From 77, when they did Spectres, till probably Club Ninja in 85. The way these songs are written, not lyrically. Blue Oyster Cult had a lot more going on lyrically. But the way the songs are written, they have that similar sound to them. And I mean that as a compliment because I love Blue Oyster Cult's work.
I don't think he would have heard of them. I think Michael, as I said, is in a bubble of his own, and I'm not sure. I'd be gobsmacked if he was aware of them, but I'm sure our viewers go, "No, you're wrong." But
they may have played.
I read lots of interviews with this guy, and I get the feel that he is very blinkered in respect to contemporary rock, in respect of whoever he's had support him or he's supported them. You know, and I just find that really unique that somebody that is such a virtuoso, he's almost borderline genius with the guitar, can be so blinkered about not listening to music, around. Because I have this vision of somebody that, to be at that level, to be musically curious and know what's happening. But no, he's created this whole world. And maybe some people are just struck by talent and you just can't explain it. It's like lightning, it just happens. He may be one of those people.
Could be.
Can't explain.
Yeah. So, Peter, how would you rank Rock Will Never Die? And here it is. On a scale from 1 to 10.
6. I'd
6?
give it a 6. Yeah, I'd give it a 6. Musicology, sonics, but there are some questionable bits. It's not the strongest, but it's worth listening to.
Would you how would you rank One Night in Budokan then? Just out of curiosity.
7.5.
Oh, okay. So you would say that's the stronger of the two. Okay.
Yes.
I actually like this album a little more than One Night at Budokan, but I do listen to this and think, what could have been? Underutilized Derek St. Holmes. Some of the songs are repeating here. You got a lot from Built to Destroy, which I understand because they're doing the tour, but I think there should have been more stuff like Samurai or the title track from Assault Attack. And even though I'm saying I some of these songs are repeating, I wouldn't mind hearing another version of On and On too, because I think that's a very strong track. And I know it was on One Night at Budokan. I would go 7.5 on this. But again, I've heard I've been listening to the 2009 version this week, and I've been listening to this one since I've been picking it up, the original 84 version. I do love the playing on here. The playing's very strong. I think Captain Nemo and the Rock My Nights Away is a great 1-2 punch. Tackety, Mad Axeman, I like Into the Arena. Their instrumentals have always been strong because they got that neoclassical thing meets rock. It's all their songs are always driving and they just take you in.
Absolutely.
And Desert Song, yes, maybe not as strong vocally, but I think it's an excellent track. And of course, you got Doctor with Klaus bringing in his wonderful vocals. I would have loved to hear um, Derek sing a verse on this one as well, considering his chops as a vocalist. So I would go 7.5 on Rock Will Never Die. So, what do you think of Rock Will Never Die by the Michael Schenker Group? Do you like this live album more, or do you like the previous One Night at Budokan more? What are your favorite songs on the albums? What other songs would you include on this album in place of some of the others? Do you think this should have been a 2-record set originally instead of a one, despite why we thought it might have been only a 1-record set? What are your favorite songs by Michael Schenker Group? Do you still follow Michael Schenker's music? He's still been quite prolific in the last several years with new studio product. Have you heard his new album, Don't Tell Your Soul, which came out earlier this year? Please let us know in the comments. Peter, thank you so much for joining me today and
Pleasure.
talking. Thank you. And for suggesting this live album that maybe our rankings aren't quite the highest on this one as we have on previous shows, but it is a live album that doesn't get enough love or recognition. And there's the vinyl for you right there. Peter, what do you have going on your wonderful channel, Rock Daydream Nation?
Oh, wow. Lots of stuff happening. I've got a show on 1984 being the greatest year in hard rock and heavy metal with Melissa Nee. Interview with Stu Cook from Creedence Clearwater Revival. We just spoke for an hour, and that was just a revelation. And we do talk about John Fogerty and the demise of Creedence Clearwater, as well as a supergroup called Jackdog that he undertook with 2 members of the Doobie Brothers, and it's getting a re-release. It was on the shelf. No record company would touch it, but it's getting a release. And another show coming out where I do an interview with Pete Golby, for the singer of Uriah Heep. It was in Trapeze,
Mm.
and a revelation. Pete was the singer of Rainbow in the Down to Earth before Graham Bonnet for 2 weeks.
Hmm.
So we get an inside story that's never been told. So that's going to be on the channel. So yeah, 3 shows in the bag over the next week. Check it out. But hey, really appreciate being back on the channel, and you're definitely coming across. Stay tuned.
Just say the word, Peter. I'm there. Thank you for coming on today. I look forward to
Absolutely.
having you on the channel again. Maybe we'll do another live cut down the road, or perhaps another panel. A lot of ideas going through my head, just trying to sort things out. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Do what you love, and we'll talk to you soon.